I have 10 books to share with you from June and what I read in June. Winnie is here. She wants to come and say hello. She just got a haircut. She got her summer haircut. What do you think, Winnie? You look great. You look oh, I love you too. I love you too. You go down and play. So Winnie is here. You might hear some rustling about in the background because of her, but I wanted to dive in and tell you all the books that I read. We're going to start this time with the tolerable. These are books that were just okay. I enjoyed them. I wasn't blown away by them. They are not bad books in any way, and I may very well suggest that you read them, but they're just okay. The tolerable books. Starting with The Milky Way. This was honestly a really fun book. It is a nonfiction book, but written from the perspective of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is a character, and she is explaining herself and who she is and how she came to be and how she rules everything in our little universe, because she is our little universe, and the complexity of the universe and all of the universes. And it just was really interesting. I will tell you, a lot of this went way over my head. I realized while reading this that I know nothing. I truly know nothing about astronomy. Astronomy? Is that right? Yes. See, I clearly know nothing and need to read more. But this was a really great kind of introductory way of learning. And I thought it was really fun that it's written from the perspective of the Milky Way. I will say it was great that the Milky Way was a little snarky at times. She had some real character and she looked down upon humans a lot of the time, and I couldn't blame her. So I really liked that. One of my coworkers told me about that. We're both like quite fascinated by the universe and what can go on in the universe, but I have a feeling she knows so much more than I do, because yeah, I felt a bit dumb reading it, but that's okay. Maybe I'll just read more about the universe and all of that. Next was a book that my mom recommended to me. She really loved it. It's called Dear Edward. This is a fictional book about a boy who survives a plane crash. He is the only survivor. He loses his mom and dad. He loses his big brother, and of course everyone else on the plane dies as well. He goes to stay with his aunt and uncle. They had been trying to conceive for many, many years and lost many pregnancies, and so they kind of leave that dream behind when he comes to live with them. He soon becomes very good friends with a neighborhood girl, which is really like lovely storyline in the book. And he's essentially dealing with being the only survivor and having survivor guilt and holding a lot of things in and not knowing how to process a lot of things, doing things that he thinks his parents would like, that he thinks that his brother would like, and not for himself. Like, he's even wearing his brother's clothes a lot, and is just really interesting take. And I think it would be very realistic with how someone would deal with that, being the only survivor. So I enjoyed it, but I wasn't blown away. It felt really long, I will say, as I was going through. I was like, okay, I kind of get the point here, but it just kept going. So there is that. Next up is the new book by Ian Reid. This is We Spread. In this book, we're following Penny. She is an artist and she lives in an apartment building on her own. Her husband of many years, actually I think it's just her partner. They didn't marry, but her partner of many years has died and she's alone. And one day when she's trying to reach for something, she steps up onto a chair and she falls, and she's injured and she's on the floor for a while until she's found. And so we follow her then, and also moving to a new place. It's like a retirement home kind of community. And she's very hesitant to move there at first. And it takes some time for her to open up to it. But when she does, And when she meets the other residents, which are very few and far between, it's this beautiful place with like trees all around it, and which is very different for someone who lives in New York. She just really falls in love with it, and she starts painting again, which is something she hadn't done in years, and she thinks this is going to be amazing. And then strange things start happening that makes her question her own sanity, and then also makes her question where she is. It is kind of jaw-dropping a lot of the time. There are a lot of scenes in here that are extremely discomforting, in a similar way to I'm Thinking of Ending Things, where just scenes jump out at you and like they're so vivid and disturbing that you can't get them out of your head. I will say that, but I did feel like it didn't have like a major twist from me or like a major aha moment. It was more of a slow burn, which I did enjoy, but I wasn't blown away the same way that I was with his previous books, Foe, and then also I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So there is that one. Next up is The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. This is about three women living in the suburbs. Two of them are moms. We follow Whitney, who is kind of this person who needs everything to look a certain way. Like she has everything together. She is perfect. She hosts a barbecue with the neighbors, and everyone comes, and she is found like yelling at her teenage son, and everyone hears it, and it's very awkward. So we follow her, and then we follow her kind of best friend and I don't know, kind of follower, if that makes any sense, named Blair. Blair is a major people pleaser. She will do anything for her daughter. She will do practically anything for her husband. She's trying to be like Whitney, essentially, through the book. But she's got some of her own edge that were quite disturbing in some moments. And then we also follow Rebecca. Rebecca is a doctor who has been trying to conceive for a very long time and has not been able to have a successful pregnancy. And we're following all of these young women about a month after that party, when the same boy who was yelled at falls from a window, and he is badly hurt, like may not survive hurt. He is multiple broken bones, all of the above. So we're following, Whitney at the hospital by his bedside. Rebecca is a doctor who is taking care of him. And then Blair kind of comes to the bedside as well. And it's the relationships between these women and the inner dialogue of each woman and the inner struggles of each woman. I will say this is one of the best representations of infertility that I have read. First of all, I loved Rebecca. I loved her storyline. I liked who she was as a person. But yeah, watching that and reading that felt very reminiscent for me and really stuck with me. I will say there are some graphic details about miscarriage in here, which is hard. And if you are trying to conceive, this may make you feel less alone. It may also make you feel like you don't want to read about this. So I will leave it up to you to decide for yourself. But I did enjoy it. I didn't love it as much as The Push. It just was missing that thrillery element to me. It read much more Leanne Moriarty to me than thriller. So mystery, yes, but not a huge mystery. So I'll leave it with you to decide what you want to do, if you want to pick that one up or not. We'll say she's Canadian, and she was in the publishing industry before she became a writer. And I will read everything by Ashley Audrain. This was good, but not The Push good. Second books are hard for authors, I think. And I feel like I just made it harder for her because I was critical of her book. Now I feel guilty. Moving right along to The Splendid. These are books that I just really loved reading from start to finish. They were easy to read. I was gobbling them up in the best of ways. And a lot of these books are scary. At least the first two were scary. So first up is Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. Darcy Coates can write some scary books, everybody. This was a ghost story in only the way that Darcy Coates can write. We follow a woman named Margaret Hull. She lived with her grandmother, I believe, for many years, like most of her childhood. Her parents essentially gave her away and she never saw them again. She doesn't understand why that happened. And her parents have recently died extremely suddenly. They both had heart attacks in bed at the same time. They both died. They have now passed along their home and their winemaking business to Margot. And so she's going back to the home that she was like born in, like raised for a very short period of time of her life. And you know, trying to understand her parents. She doesn't hate her parents, but she like wants to learn more. She's also not sure if she wants this business that came out of nowhere, it seems. But she has to go and live at Gallows Hill, the house that her parents died in, and she should have fond memories of. And immediately, like the first night, what I love about Darcy Coates is you don't have to wait to be scared. You are not going to wait to be scared. The first night, all sorts of terrifying things start happening. There are bells ringing. There are things erected from the earth and like tied around the house. It was truly, truly scary at times. I will say I was slightly disappointed by the end. But the history of this house is really interesting in terms of the fact that the Hulls have always lived in this house, and it seems like it might have been cursed, is what I'll say, that they might have been cursed. Really enjoyed it. Next up is The Spite House, which I was pleasantly surprised by. I'd heard little bits and pieces about this book, but I just had it on hold at the library. I came in on audio and I fell in love with this book. In this book, we're following a father with his two daughters. They're kind of on the run. Like, it's essentially like he shouldn't have these kids, and yet the kids are on board that they want to stay with him, and so they're all happy to be on the run together. He also needs a job because he has no money left, and he sees, I think in the newspaper or something, an advertisement for people to stay in a house and to observe any sort of paranormal activity in the house. They need to write it down in a journal, what they're finding. And when he meets the owner of the house and the person who made this advertisement, she's essentially trying to create a documentary to prove that the house is haunted, because no one really believes that it's haunted fully. And so she needs people to stay there to document things in order to get this ball rolling. And he agrees to go and bring his daughters there. Now, there are twists in here that I didn't see coming, that I really liked. This mystery about where they are running from, why they're on the run, this dad and these girls. It all like slowly is unraveled in the most beautiful way. Like, I really liked it, how the unraveling happened. And then you're also unraveling the true motives of this woman trying to get information, documentation of this haunting and why she so desperately needs it. You unfurl that and it's such a delicious experience. I really, really liked it. So I'd highly recommend that. Next up is a nonfiction book that I really enjoyed called Fair Play. Now this was kind of given the stamp of approval by Reese Witherspoon. It's a nonfiction book about household life and how to create an equitable household in terms of doing things like chores, like things like the daily grind. So things that you have to do all the time. Dishes, bedtime, if you have kids, meals, blah, 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 blah. Now, I will say, like, in our house, it's fairly equal. But there's a lot of, I don't know, you probably understand this. There's a lot of like, are you going to do it or am I going to do it? Like in the middle of the night, Nora wakes up. Am I going to get her? Are you going to get her? There's a lot of that. And the concept of this book and the 100 activities that you're supposed to divvy up is that you're not having those questions in your head. You know what you're responsible for and you go and do those things. And I really like that idea. Some of it doesn't really apply to us and others do. And that's kind of the point, is that she gives you all of these cards and you can activities, I should say. And you can kind of decide what is valuable and what you value in your family and what you don't. So I enjoyed reading that. We have started to kind of apply it. I'm not sure if it's going to work for us or not. We shall see. But I like the idea of it a lot. Oh, the next one is The Last Lifeboat by Hazel Gaynor. This was one of those books that came in and I immediately devoured it. It was so, so good. This takes place in the 1940s, like right in the thick of World War II. We follow two women. Lily Nichols, her husband died in the war. She has two children and the bombs are dropping in London. She had previously sent her kids away to the English countryside, but then the bombs weren't dropping at that time. And so there was like this whole period of time where she was separated from her kids and she's like, why did I do this? Because this is pointless. She brings them back and then the bombs start to drop. And so the government has decided that a bunch of kids will now go away, but they will go away to Canada and to the US and I think Australia as well. And this truly did happen. So she decides to send them away and they're on their way to Canada. We also follow a woman named Alice King who feels like she doesn't have a place in the war and like she's not participating in the war enough. She's a librarian, but not feeling like she's committed enough to her duties, I suppose. So she finds out that there is the potential to be like an escort essentially for these children to go to Canada, the US, Australia, what have you. And she signs up. The kids and Alice, all of them get on board the SS Carlisle as it transports children to Canada. And then the Nazis bring it down. They bring down the ship and many children die, many adults die. And we follow Alice and some children in a lifeboat in the middle of nowhere, essentially, waiting, praying to be rescued. It was so easy to like flip the pages. I will say, like, I feel like historical fiction can be very hit or miss for me in terms of authors. Susan Meissner, I know I'm in good hands. And now Hazel Gaynor, I know I'm in good hands, so we'll read anything by them. I've read a few of hers before and I just really like them. And this is their latest and it was so atmospheric. Like you felt the sea air, you felt the desperation. Like it felt extremely atmospheric in the best of ways. I really liked it. Moving on, to the Vial. I've got one Vial book, guys. I'm so sad to say that I really kind of hated The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Oh, this I read at the beginning of June, so I'm trying to like conjure up my memories of it. But in this book, we follow Shay Evans. She and her best friends in college end up being part of a cult, kind of unknowingly. The father of one of her friends is a very charismatic man and essentially warps their minds into thinking that women are nothing and that men are everything, and he is like the ultimate everything. So we follow her when she's gotten away. She and one of her friends did escape this cult, and they moved on, and they promised each other, we're going to go as far away as we possibly can from this place. And Shay, our main character, does, but the other woman does not, and she only finds out when she's listening to her favorite podcast and hears that her friend is dead and is trying to find out what happened. Now, the podcast just happens to be created by a childhood friend of hers. I found that a bit silly. And they kind of band together to try to find out what happened to Shay's friend. And okay, so here's what I don't like about this book. Several things. Just throwing yourself in danger repeatedly without much of a plan. That drives me nuts. Like, why are you being stupid? I don't understand why people have to be stupid. Come up with a good plan. And like, she just does that repeatedly in this book. And that drove me nuts. I also found it very annoying how quickly she was, what is the word? Essentially how quickly it took, how little time it took for this man to completely brainwash, that's the word, brainwash her. And I often am like, okay, so yes, I believe in brainwashing, but only to a certain extent. Like, there is a period of time where you do have your own thoughts, right? Like, so that I found very frustrating, and I found the sexual nature of this book very annoying. Now, this was like extreme sexuality, like violent sex, and that I mean, that was annoying as well. But just, there was a lot of that, like, oh, he touched me and then I felt blah, and I'm like, ugh, just, you know me, no heart. Even, like, it doesn't matter, it just, no heart. It drove me nuts and makes me not want to read anything by her, even though I have, in my dreams, I hold a knife on my shelves. But it really annoyed me. So don't recommend that one. Don't recommend it. But now we're going to get to my favorite book of June, and that is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. I am in safe hands when I read this author. This was like one of the most fun books I've ever read. I just had so much fun reading this. It is silly at times, but in the best of ways. So in this book, we're following a woman named Emma. She lives kind of in the middle of nowhere. She's house sitting, and she's got her beautiful golden retriever with her. Now, she's truly just chilling out in this home. She reads a lot of books on her Kindle, and the most recent book that she read was a horror book, and she hated it. She despised this book, and so she goes online and leaves a scathing review. Well, doesn't the author of that horror book reach out to her and say, like, I appreciate your feedback. However, I spent years writing this book, months writing this book. Like, why are you trying to bring it down when this is my livelihood? She's like, I really don't owe you anything. I'm a reader. Thanks. And they have this awkward back and forth. And then it's over. But then things start happening to her. Things start happening, and it is eerie and strange. And she's going, is the author somehow aware of where I live and doing all of these things? And you as the reader are going, no, it couldn't possibly be that. That would be ridiculous. It is so much fun. Just insane. There is like major home invasion vibes in this book. which I loved. You read from our main character's perspective, and you also read from the person trying to get into this house's perspective, which was honestly laugh out loud funny. The juxtaposition of these points of view, laugh out loud funny. I feel like Taylor had such fun writing this in the way that I feel like Grady Hendrix has fun writing. And it's just like, readers, I hope you're along for the ride and we can all have a good chuckle about this. It was scary at times, but it was more fun than scary. I just loved it. I really, really did. Highly recommend. I feel like that's a book that you either love or hate. I've read a lot of people who are just like, what the hell was that? And I'm like, I get it. I'm sorry that you didn't get it. I'm sorry that you didn't enjoy, because like, it was so much fun. Okay, that's it. I'm going to stop. I'm going to love you and leave you. I hope you guys are doing really well, and I will talk with you soon. Oh, let me know. What was your favorite book from June? I'd love to know. I'll talk with you soon. Bye.